Hi everyone, today we watched Barry. Actually, we've been watching Barry. Season 3 just wrapped up this Sunday, and wow, was it a lot. It was a lot, and for fans of Barry, this is a video for you because we're going to be going full spoilers, full review of the entire season. We talked a little bit about... Season 3. We talked a little bit about the first 2 seasons, but because the final episode of Season 3 just dropped on Sunday, we thought we'd kind of give a little bit of an update and talk about what was so great and shocking in a lot of ways about Season 3. So we're going to dive into that.
And if you want to know more about Seasons 1 and 2, we actually already did a review about that, as Jake stated. So we'll be linking that on the description section of this video. So
basically, it's our favorite show now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been our favorite show for a while. We actually signed up for HBO Max just because of Barry initially.
Pretty much, yeah. We'll start with just non-spoilers, I guess. So, okay, what's so great about Season 3 compared to Seasons 1 and 2?
So Season 3 is completely upside down.
Right.
If we can call Season 1 and 2 right side up.
It feels so tonally different from the first 2.
It does. Barry is so dark. There's like humorous moments that's almost scary humorous. Barry goes full wild. There's almost no remorseful moment for him, almost. Highlight the almost. And, you know, not just Barry, with Sally's character is really different. With the acting coach, his character is really different.
Yeah.
NoHo Hang's character is kind of still more in line, but
he's become
still a little bit more of like he's grown. It's just a lot. It doesn't feel like, it feels like dark. I mean, it was always dark comedy, but it became darker.
Feels like it felt like a comedy with a lot of darkness in the first 2 seasons. Now it feels like a really dark drama with occasional moments of levity.
Yes, it's almost like the season flipped, and whereas like this was like a sequel of the first 2 seasons, and it wasn't the same show. There's a little remorseful occasions for Barry in the 3rd season, and I'm really hopeful that the 4th season, because it's already been approved and it's on the works, or has been on the works, will be more the remorseful Barry and more of like atoning for his sins, whereas Season 3 was like Bill Hader is like, I don't know why you guys like Barry so much, you know? Well, I'm going to show you how bad he really is.
Well, that's what it seemed like to me. It seems like it was a progression of, we have this sitcom formula and we just need to keep changing it. We don't want to become static. And it felt like throughout the whole season, it was almost jarringly fast.
Yeah.
Like there was really no moment where it was like, okay, this is what we're doing. It was always, what is this now? Like the character, it's so fast. 30-minute episodes. It's the only show where I could think like it just was like, I want more. I want it to be longer. Usually I want shows to be cut shorter, to be a little more slim. But this show is like, we could use a little more fat on that bone.
It was like, it was so packed with so much going on, and it was not boring for 1 second. It was just like, whoa, that was only 20 minutes. They covered so freaking much, different storylines. Yeah. You know, you really get to see the deeper sides of each character, I think, what really makes them. For Barry especially, I think you get to see like what really led him to become the Barry as we know it. What are his deepest, darkest thoughts? I hesitate to state this way, but this is how I feel. I almost feel like it puts a realistic lens on Barry, and the reason why I hesitate is because it's a dark comedy, right? So obviously the reality of people like him would be billion times more horrible. But I guess like why I loosely use the word realistic is because you get to see people who do this aren't necessarily people to root for and they have a lot of accountability and a lot of selfish decisions that make them who they are.
Well, yeah, and I think that the whole point of Season 3 and the whole show in general is deconstructing this like hitman action character, this kind of this archetype that is in Hollywood action movies, you know, of a killer, and how we were kind of desensitized to violence. I think the show is in a lot of ways just about violence and how we process it and how we portray it in media. I mean, I think it makes sense that Barry is drawn to acting because there's a lot of theatricality that we put into this image of killers and killing and death, and a lot of distance we put towards violence, especially in movies. And, you know, that's fine, you know, in a lot of ways, and, you know, in media and violence and portrayed like that. But I think that what makes Barry unique is that it's trying to look at this character of a hitman very soberly and very honestly, and explore not just the violence done, but the consequences of the violence. I mean, we're seeing in season 3 characters' loved ones coming back and haunting Barry all throughout the season. It's kind of a reckoning where there's like this storm of all of what he did coming back to him. It's like the hitman's worst night. It's Barry's worst nightmare because he wants to not think about the killings that he does. He wants to pretend like it's something he had to do, that it's not really who he is. But as we've come to see in this season especially, that Barry can't really hold these two sides of his personality separately anymore. It's kind of colliding, and his personal, fun, happy life is intersecting with his violent life, like it always had in the previous seasons, which makes for great comedy. And in a lot of ways, very funny. But in this season, you see the ugly side. And I think we really get a sense that Bill Hader wants us to really not like Barry.
Yeah, it's almost like you have this vision when you watch season 1 and 2 of Barry, like these two galaxies colliding in the universe that
is
like
Barry.
Really beautiful, makes really beautiful colors. Like, wow, isn't that beautiful? But then if you're one of the planets in that colliding galaxy, it's quite scary and it's quite raw and it's quite like grotesque. And that's literally what season 3 is. It's almost like season 1 and 2, they were more of the mask, like outside perspective. Like, it's an audience, isn't this funny? Isn't that? And then season 3 is like a deep lens, deep dive into Barry's just grotesque moments.
But not just Barry too, because all the characters are kind of dealing with their past. Like Gene is dealing with his
But
dark
Gene
side.
is dealing with it because of Barry.
Yeah.
But like, I really want to talk about Gene, but I don't think there is a way to talk about it without spoiling it. So if you're ready,
I'm ready.
Let's go to the spoiler section. So let's talk about Gene first, actually, since you mentioned it.
Well, that's kind of the big thing, because Gene is Barry's father or new father figure. It's kind of like Fuchs was his old father figure, the bad father. Now Gene is supposedly the good one.
He doesn't really, but okay, so in season 3, I would say in season 1 and 2, Gene did become the father figure. But in season 3, I don't think Barry has a father figure. And I think that's literally what drives his emptiness inside, is that he doesn't really have anyone who really loves him anymore, who really has no one has his back anymore.
And that's really like evident at the very end when Moss is kind of questioning Cousineau, saying, "Do you love Barry Berkman?"
And he says no.
He says no, and Sally doesn't love him. Nobody loves him because he's a monster.
He is a monster, and Sedona wants to really be with us. So I think like one of the things that drives Barry and his just ugliness in season 3 is the lack of a father figure, who Gene became in season 1 and 2, as we were speaking about that. Gene, he lost his girlfriend and he is really struggling, and he really wants Barry to atone for his sin. Yeah, and he really tries to, like, at first, in the earlier season episodes in the season, he really tries to tell the police, like, Barry's the one who killed her and everything else, and really wants to punish Barry, goes after Barry. But Barry, unbeknownst to him, kill Barry. Yeah, but Barry, unbeknownst to Gene, is more of a psycho than he thought. And
even more than we thought.
Yeah, even more than we thought. And this is where we get to see, like, whoa, Barry is scary as crap.
Well,
so Barry then tries to kill Gene, and while Barry is trying to kill Gene, he has this idea, because of a conversation that Gene had with Barry at the moment of a gun pointing at him to save his own life, that, Barry may be able to atone for his sins with Gene by getting Gene's career back.
Yeah.
And in this, he tries to get Gene into a show. He tries to, like, force people, like his girlfriend Sally, which we'll talk about when we get to Sally.
Well, I would like to say, because there are signs, like, of course, at the end of season 2, Barry goes crazy. He kills a bunch of, like, gang members. Mm-hmm. And to us as viewers, we're kind of trained to go, well, they're gang members, whatever. He's a hitman. But Barry, the moment when Barry kills those two guys in the first scene of season 3, when the guy goes, I've forgiven him, because he's like was cheating with his wife or whatever. He goes, I've forgiven him. And then Barry just kills them both and says, there's no forgiving. And that's kind of the whole point. Like, can Barry be forgiven? Can he forgive himself? Is that even possible?
Well, and then spoiler alert, end of season 3, there is no forgiving for Barry either. No. So that kind of like is more of, it shows you it's the same thing in the end. The beginning theme and the ending theme is basically the same. There is no forgiveness.
Barry is fundamentally, I think, evil. I think he's evil deep down.
I don't know if he's fundamentally, but I think he just doesn't know his way out of it. Well, let's talk about that debate, but let's go into Gene.
Okay, but when Barry yells at Sally, that's when us.
But we have to. You're kind of jumping ahead of the gun.
All right, we'll stick with Gene. So, what does Barry do to Gene?
So Barry tries to get forgiveness from Gene by helping Gene get his acting career.
And while he's doing that, where is Gene at?
In the trunk of his car. And but like Gene, we see that Gene actually was not a great person before, and actually season 3 makes him a good person. So Gene had a history of yelling at people, at like sabotaging people's career because he was a brat.
He has all enemies in the film industry. Like, that's why he can't get any work.
Yeah, and then Barry does really help Gene get his work because Barry and Gene, they do a scene together that Barry forces Gene to be part of, and then Gene says something that is not in the script. The directors and the writers love it, and then his acting career restarts, and he realizes in the journey of restarting his career that he had hurt a lot of people. So the rest of the season for him is really about him making like amends with people that he hurt. But the last episode of season 3, Gene's ex-girlfriend, or Gene's girlfriend who was killed by Barry's, her dad asks Gene about Barry and interrogates.
Well, at this point, Barry and Gene had kind of made peace. Barry kind of got over his need for Gene to like love him and his. Well, maybe not that, but basically he stopped threatening Gene and his family, which is showing the depths to which Barry was going. Earlier seasons, Barry wouldn't hurt a child, but in season 3, he's threatening to kill all of Gene's loved ones.
His kids. His kid and his grandkid.
Barry finally kind of gets out of this perspective and lets Gene go, gives him some money. It's like, look, you don't have to worry about money. A lot of money.
A lot of money.
From a drug deal.
I mean, granted, what is a lot when you live in Hollywood, which is really expensive.
He could pay rent for a couple months with that, yeah. But I think that Gene comes to a kind of understanding with Barry, and Gene's experience with this is to kind of atone for his past and kind of do the work to be forgiven, helping out others that he's wronged, that sort of thing. And it seems like he's genuinely gotten better. However, this is complicated when Moss, who is his dead girlfriend's father, who's like a very tough interrogator, was in the military, CIA, whatever, he forces Gene and gets him to feel guilty about this kind of alliance with Barry, and gets Gene to stop protecting Barry. And that's how they set up the sting at the end of the episode, which the very end of the season ends with Barry getting arrested by like a huge SWAT team.
Yep, and then so Gene is directly responsible for Barry's demise at this point. Not like obviously very justified, but it just shows you the arc of Barry and Gene's character, where he went from being a father figure to Barry, really wanting to help Barry, to really stating to Moss that he didn't love Barry, and also for sabotaging Barry completely. It shows the whole theme that we're talking about in the beginning, that Barry says there's no forgiveness. Gene reconfirms that theme and says there is no forgiveness.
Or is there? Because Gene seems like there was forgiveness for Gene,
Maybe there's forgiveness, but there is accountability as well with that forgiveness.
Well, also Barry,
you don't slide past anything without accountability.
Well, yeah, and Barry had a choice to change. He could have, especially after, and this is something else we can talk about, after confronting the detective.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more extent. Sure. Let's talk about Barry next, because there's a lot to talk about Barry that I think kind of goes and collides with other characters.
There's so much in this show. There's so much in the 8 30-minute episodes. So All right, what do you want to say?
Well, let's talk about Barry and his arc. Why don't you lead that since...
Well, I feel like we've kind of been going through his arc.
Well, not with like Sarah, with Detective. I think that's a very big thing throughout the season.
Barry is basically cleared of all suspicion at the start of season 3. And he's living his life with Sally, but he's very depressed. You know, he's playing video games all day, which of course means you're depressed, and he is killing people, and he's trying to get help from others like NoHo Hank. And NoHo Hank is kind of in a better position in his life. It seems like he's in love with Cristobal, the other gang leader. And,
of a different nationality.
Of a different gang, different nationality, but they have this secret alliance and love for each other, which ends up being a huge problem for them. And it's interesting because NoHo Hank, to me, always seemed like the more evil between him and Barry. And he seemed more accepting of that. However, in season 3, we kind of see him as the most noble in a lot of ways and kind of getting to a place of happiness and peace with Cristobal. And it just brings me back to that moment in season 2 when Barry asks NoHo Hank, am I evil? Like, am I an evil person? And there's the pause and NoHo Hank says,
of course.
Yes, you're like the most evil person I know.
Yes.
And that kind of just all of the seeds were kind of planted in the earlier seasons for how dark this show would get, how dark Barry would get. And Barry is just falling apart. He's threatening Jean's family. He's on a rampage, you know, of just murderous rampage, until finally he settles down a little bit in the middle of season 3. And it seems almost like he's settling down a little bit, like maybe he'll find his forgiveness, he'll do the right thing. One of the detectives who is kind of on the trail, kind of bringing up this suspicion of Barry again, is the person who Barry saved when he was in Afghanistan, saved his life. So this detective has a complicated relationship with Barry because he wants to catch Barry, but he also can't. He can't because Barry saved his life, you know. He owes Barry something, you know. So it's really difficult for him. But at the end of, in episode 8 of the 3rd season, this detective tells Barry, this ends now. You know, what you've done, it needs to stop. And Barry has a breakdown, you know. He's like screaming and crying. It's very... I think it's like the first time we've seen Barry finally like confront his emotions in like a very raw way that isn't anger or violence. You know, he finally breaks down, and you think, wow, this must be the moment. This has to be when Barry changes. What other moment could it be? You know, like the biggest confrontation you can have. Immediately after, Barry goes in to kill Moss because he's compromised, you know, and he could have just as easily fled or turned himself in or even just not taken the bait, because it was bait, you know, it was a setup. But Barry immediately took it, and it showed that he was not willing to grow. He's not willing to change. That at the end of the day, Barry is his number one concern. He's always going to protect himself first.
Well, one could argue that maybe he did that because he was so concerned about Jean going backwards in his life that he was afraid for Jean, and he really wanted to go back into it to kill Moss in order to protect Jean.
I don't think it was about protecting Jean.
And why would you say that?
Because he was mad at Jean. He was like, why would you compromise us?
But you could still argue that like he was mad at Jean because he was disappointed in that Jean went backwards when he was doing so well in his career.
No, I think it was just like, you're being stupid. Like, why do you have a gun? Why are you caught up in this? Like, we were literally just doing fine, and now I have to kill someone again because my identity is compromised. So
when you say like Barry may think, I have to kill someone again, what if he thought he could change, but he couldn't because he was being forced back into it, and that's really why he was mad at Jean?
No, Barry thinks, and all throughout the season, Barry thinks he's doing stuff for other people. That he's really doing it for himself. Yeah. Look at the beginning with Jean, trying to get Jean a job that Jean doesn't want, and Barry's dragging him around in the trunk of his car, and he's saying, either you let me help you get a job, or I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
It's not about, you know, you can't like force someone to give you forgiveness.
Right.
You know, it's not how it works. And Barry's thinking only about his
There's
self-preservation.
no consensus in like his relationship with anyone. It's just about Barry's needs and wants.
It's all again and again, and I think we're kind of tricked in by these tropes and by the way Barry is kind of an abusive character to us, the audience, in a way. Very seductive in terms of like we relate to him. We've related to him for the past 2 seasons as he does horrible things.
Yeah, and I think it's like also, yes, Barry can and has helped people, but it's not without selfish reasons. It's not without selfish goals. If there was a lack of selfish goal when he helped someone else, he probably wouldn't have helped someone else. It's always about self-preservation, but he rarely just thinks about accountability. And I think one of the moments where I felt like he was going to change his ways and go to the directions of accountability during his interaction with the detective. The detective learns that Barry actually accidentally killed another army friend that they had, Chris. He points a gun at Barry, but then he lowers it saying, Barry, I know you're good in your heart. I know you've saved me, you've done good acts, I've seen it. Change your ways. You need to let go of this now. The change starts now with you, Barry.
And I'm wondering if that's going to be possible in season 4.
I think that honestly, that just like you stated about Anoho Hank confirming that Barry's evil and it playing out on season 3, right? I'm wondering this is supposed to be playing out in season 4. Now that we've seen all of the evilness of Barry, I don't know how far you can go unless you're just making Barry like it almost seems like if this is the direction, then season 4 would be the end.
Well, it's like once Barry is so, and that's kind of part of an issue I had with season 3 a little bit, is that how far can you push Barry towards evil to the point where we just stop caring about his own well-being?
Well, Bill Hader actually during the COVID, he stated that they rewrote season 3 and 4, and so because they wrote 2 seasons like almost together, that I think they are supposed to complement each other. So almost like each season serves a theme. So if season 3 serves the theme of forgiveness, maybe season 4 serves the theme of atonement. And I'm like really interested. That's where my prediction is. But we'll see. I mean, there's really, honestly, one thing that I have noticed. Yeah, but one thing that I've noticed with Barry is that it's really like hard to predict what happens because they change a script so fast, and some of the episodes are so out there that you really can't predict that. And that's one of the brilliant things about Barry is it's so out there and it's so
and you change character alliances. Like we have like a media culture where we kind of align with one character and stick with them and we expect them to stay the good guy. However, in this show, and I think it also like Succession does this really well too, where we're kind of switching alliances of, this person is getting worse, so maybe this person's actually better, or this person's getting better, this person's getting worse. And it's like throughout the season, there was a point where I was like, I hate Sally. Sally, I'm on her side now. I'm rooting for Sally. Oh, I'm not rooting for Sally. She's messed up. It's just like up, down, up, down. Same with Barry, same with Gene, all the characters. It really shows how changeable human personalities are based on their environment.
Yes, exactly.
And circumstances.
And I really believe that that's really what gets Barry like the notoriety that it does is the.
I just wish more people watched it. I know it's like critically beloved,
acclaimed,
but there's not. I don't think as many people watch it.
I hope they do, but I think it's gonna go to like very it's gonna the show's gonna age, I think, really well. And I think that it's going to be one of those beloved show for years to come.
I think so. I wish, however, and one of my gripes with this season is that it felt very much like one long movie. And maybe it's because the episodes are so short. And I know
there's a lot going on too.
Yeah, I know a lot of TV's like this, but from I think releasing it one episode a week is typically a good way to do it with TV shows. It keeps the story and the conversation going. But honestly, for Barry, I feel like it's better to binge it because I was forgetting what was happening from episode to episode.
I would really love it if they released it all together for sure.
Like I want to rewatch season 3, binging it, because that's how we watched the first 2 seasons.
And it was an incredible experience.
Yeah, and I think this season kind of lost some of that momentum of like, it really kind of feels like it needs to be watched all at once.
Yeah, I think you can appreciate the brilliance of it a lot more when you binge it because it's 20-minute episodes. They're very short, so you can really watch 3 episodes together for an hour, and it's really great. I do want to talk about, before we end this, Sally's character.
Yeah.
And why don't you talk to us about that?
Well, Sally she starts the season at a high point. She has her own show now that she's working on very hard. It's not certain if it's going to be a success or not, but things are going well for her. Things aren't going well for Barry. Later on, the show gets released and is very critically acclaimed. However, there's a scene when Barry confronts Sally in the office. He's trying to get Jean a job, and he blows up, explodes in a very violent way. Like, he's not violent, he's just screaming at her in her office with her writers and stuff.
Very scary.
Yeah, it was really shocking. Like, we've never seen Barry's character go that far.
He's yelling at her because he wants her to employ Jean into her show.
Yeah.
And she states that she cannot because no one wants to work with Jean because he has a really bad reputation in the industry. So,
and we've seen Barry blow up towards others and towards himself. So we know he has an anger problem, but it's just becoming so he just can't contain it anymore.
He's unhinged.
He's hurting those he loves, and he really underplays it later. Like, it's kind of darkly funny when later he's talking about I raised my voice. I was like, you need to hire Jean. Like, that was how loud it was.
Honestly, it was a really, really good perspective on abusers that you think, like, just because they do it to other people, they won't do it to you. But then it really shows, like, no, you're wrong. This is a scary person. They can snap at any point. And if you think you're an exception, you're dumb because you're not the exception. So I think it really showed perspective on that. But Sally's character also takes a little bit of a dip for me because her show gets canceled. She gets all this critical acclaim. She gets really good score at Rotten Tomato. But then when it gets canceled, then she
gets canceled like the day of because watched enough.
And then she is part of this other show that, like, she thinks is beneath her. And then she catches her secretary.
Her assistant, who they were, like, acting friends early on in the first 2 seasons, but she was her assistant at the beginning of season 3. At the end of season 3, she has her own show, basically stealing Sally's idea. And I guess the point is, like, well, there's no rules in this industry. Anything can happen, and one day Sally's on the top, next day she's on the bottom.
Yeah, but then when her previous assistant, like, steals idea and then accelerates it into what could be a successful show, Sally explodes to her, calls her the C word, and basically tells her she's nothing, she's a failure.
She goes full on Barry on her. She
full on goes Barry on her, and then
loses it.
Yeah, and this conversation's being recorded. The next day, it's everywhere. And then when her PR team and her manager tries to confront her and just says, we can handle this, you should have come to me. And she yells at her manager and she says, a lot of unprofessional things, and her manager then fires her. Then previous seasons, earlier in the season, actually, Barry had offered to
like psychologically torment one of the executives that canceled her show, and it's a very funny scene. And like, because she's at Barry's apartment, we think, oh, this is going to be a scene where Barry can like
redeem himself. She's not in Barry's apartment. Barry's at
her apartment, but we're thinking this is a scene where Barry can redeem himself and be nice and comforting to her at a time when she's low. And he goes like, do you want me to like break into her apartment and
I can like leave photos, mentally mess with her. I can
like change her furniture.
Think she's crazy. Yeah.
She'll think she's losing her mind. She'll basically, and
then
herself.
she'll hate herself unless she doesn't like puts your show back on air.
Yeah.
And so
and then she just like get out. Like she sees like, you are insane.
Psycho. Yeah.
Like,
and then at the end when she has this confrontation with her once assistant, she basically goes to Barry and tells him that she wants him to torture and mentally torture her and basically make her go crazy. And then we're kind of like, wow, they're really made for each other.
Well, I think it fits because in a lot of ways, it's just because Barry's circumstances are different. You know, he had the military training, he's killed people, he was brought into that world. They both are incredibly selfish people. They both are only interested in themselves. They've never shown any interest in helping anyone else, you know? The acting life, the hitman life, what's so different except, you know, the bodies piling up, you know? And in that way, they're kind of made for each other. They're looking out for themselves alone, you know? And so, of course, when that happens, there just so happens to be someone who's trying to kill Barry, breaks into the apartment, and starts strangling Sally. Sally, fortunately, gets the upper hand and brutally murders this killer with like a bat or something.
And after she's already defended herself, she goes back.
Yeah, she already like stabbed him, but she's like sorry, I spit on you. She goes overkill and like brutally kills him, and Barry is like, it's almost like Barry's happy because it's like they have something together.
I don't think that I saw that he was happy. I thought that he was shocked.
No, but he's like wanting to comfort her, and it's like that's what he wants. Like he wants to share this world of his with her.
Well, I don't know because
they plan to run away together. They're like, we'll run away together. I did this. I'll take care of the body. Like this is just a regular Monday for me.
Remember, but then I thought that it was a little bit more than just him being selfish because he tells her like Barry did this, not you.
Yeah,
I think because he wants to take responsibility for her.
I don't think it's selfless though. I think that's just like, to him that's just like being like, oh, she'll like me more now, you know? It's like, I don't know. I
don't have any...
No, I don't think Barry really cares about helping her. I think he thinks in his head, like, I'm being the nice guy here. But in reality, it's like, this is just a regular Monday for him, you know, having to go bury a body. Like, what's the big deal for him? For Sally, it's a big deal. So he's like, oh, I'll look like a good guy and I'll use this to manipulate her. Because look, he knows information about her, right? He has the upper hand. This is another way to leverage his power against her, and we think that they're going to run away together. That's what they talk about. We see, however,
it's like Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah. And Barry's like into this, you know, or not into this, but is like accepted it, and he's like fine with it. Sally, however, turns out she's lying to Barry on the phone. Smart move. And flies away to Joplin, you know, and that's the last we see of Sally. But I think she kind of still recognizes that Barry is not going to change. Barry is really who he is, and I think she needs to get away from that.
Well, I guess now the only character we want to talk about is what's known as the Raven.
The Raven, Fuchs?
The Fuchs is known as a Raven.
Well, at the end, he's like, I'm the Raven.
But in the beginning, the detectives, remember, NoHo Hank calls him the Raven.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. So when we start out, Fuchs actually is... like,
he's always been terrible.
He doesn't have much of a character arc. I think Fuchs is a lot like Barry in the sense that Fuchs has had a lot of opportunities to actually like redeem himself, but then he doesn't choose to do so because he's so ignited by anger. He is in somewhat like different farmers and different like communities where he's really accepted and he could really change his life. But he then gets triggered every time he sees Barry or hears that Barry's doing well.
Just like Barry, he has the opportunity to be a better person, but each time
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then, so the thing is that, like, why don't you talk about it?
Well, that whole thing was kind of funny because he gets shot by someone and then he's recuperating outside of LA, and it's kind of like this Western story, and it's just like a weird, like, 10-minute section of him, like, recovering, and he's being taken care of by this nice family who's like, there's a way to redeem yourself.
And the woman has a crush on him.
Oh, yeah, the daughter is like, he's like, my daughter has a crush on you, but I know you're an honorable man. And it's like,
and then,
what movie are we watching now?
Yeah, and he sees
so
a
random
newspaper with Barry, and he gets triggered, and he immediately steals these nice people's truck, and he like goes after Barry. So what he does is mostly in the show, what he does is he goes to people Barry has targeted before,
the family members of his victims.
Yes, exactly, and then tells them that, hey, I know you think that your loved member died this way, but actually Barry's the reason why they're dead. He killed him. So these different families that he goes to try to take revenge on Barry, and some of them is a little very funny, and sadly, because like one of the mom and kid whose dad was killed by Barry, they tried to like kill Barry themselves, but the mom accidentally shoots the son.
The kid shoots himself accidentally. the kid ends up getting shot before, and Barry just sees them in a car, and he's just like, "Who are those?"
And we never hear from these people.
No.
And actually, at the very end, Barry gets shot by the wife of a military man who worked with Barry, whom Barry accidentally killed. And then he ends up in the hospital.
No, he's poisoned.
He's poisoned, and then
he said shot.
Sorry. So Barry actually gets poisoned by the wife of a military man whom Barry accidentally kills
purposely kills. It was the guy who he assassinated, who was his friend.
I thought he accidentally killed.
No. This was Chris in, I think, the first or second season, where because he got involved in hitman stuff, but Chris. He couldn't keep it a secret from his wife. He couldn't keep it a secret from his family anymore. So Barry has to kill him, and it's really hard for him. And that's when Barry kind of breaks down, and then he goes on stage and he does "My Lord, the King is dead."
That's right. Yeah, thank you for correcting me. So yeah, that was it. So basically, I guess the summary of what's known as the Raven at the end is that he doesn't change. At the end, he's all about
he goes to jail too.
He goes to jail too.
Him and Barry are going to jail.
Well, when the Raven goes to jail, I'll call him the Raven. When he goes to jail, then he talks about Barry more and really tries to make sure that Barry's going down with him. So Raven is the only one who doesn't have a character arc that is he's like stagnant in all 3 seasons. I feel like he's just a devil who always is kind of like, what do you expect? He's a devil kind of thing. He doesn't have any emotional range. He doesn't really have any. He has opportunities to change, but he chooses not to. And I think it's good that he's that way, because we need a character that is kind of like stable in the show. So.
I guess. I mean, it also just showed like there are so many opportunities for these characters to change themselves and better themselves. And I think that the show's kind of showing that there are choices that these characters can make to be better. They aren't all just the same. They can, and even with Fuchs, he has that opportunity to change his life and become a better person, but he's so hell-bent on revenge, and I think these characters see opportunities to gain forgiveness, but they can't do the work. They can't atone for their sins, and they're going to pay the price, as Barry does.
So I think we can wrap this up now, right? I think we're basically it's season 3 is probably one of my favorite seasons. I mean, it's hard to choose because season 2 has some great moments. So does season 1.
I think season 2 is. I mean, this honestly was not the funniest for sure.
No, but there were some funny
moments. There were some funny moments, but it was so. It honestly
was so
kind of
uncomfortable.
Depressing. Oh, we didn't even talk about Cristobal and NoHo Hank.
Oh, let's talk about them really quick. Their relationship is a total secret. Cristobal is lying to NoHo Hank because Cristobal is actually married. NoHo Hank does not know that, is in an impression that he is gay and doesn't have a family, but instead, in reality, Cristobal actually has a wife and kids in a rival gang. And so NoHo Hank really takes pride in the fact that they're honest with each other. They're really upfront. Cristobal's wife, I know there's a lot. Cristobal's wife is a little ruthless.
She seems like the master of the operations, truly.
Yeah,
and so
she seems like she is the master of the operation. And after she learns that her dad is dead, and she discovers the infidelity of Cristobal and realizes that he's actually gay, or bisexual at the very least.
So Cristobal is kidnapped, goes to Mexico, and Hank tries to save him and rescue him. Goes to Mexico, is immediately captured and put in a cell, and he's trying to find a way to escape. And it's honestly kind of harrowing because there's the sound of a lion, and I thought it was kind of funny how we talked about hey, this is a good way to avoid. It was a lion or a tiger, probably a tiger. How they avoided the CGI budget and made it way scarier because it's all sounds. All we hear is the sound of this lion attacking the next prisoner, and Hank is trying to escape. And finally, he breaks his chains just out of total fear, grabs a guard's gun, and just shoots the lion through the wall. And it's so much more effective just seeing the wall shake and the
without
sounds
actually seeing the tiger
and blood
or the lion,
come. It was kind of a horrifying sequence without ever showing the tiger or whatever.
Yeah.
Very well done. But anyways, Hank kind of goes, he has a gun now, he's going through this palace where he was being held prisoner, and finds Cristobal being electrocuted repeatedly by his wife as a form of like gay, like conversion therapy. Like it was very disturbing to watch. And Hank kills Cristobal's wife and the guards or whatever, and basically rescues him. And that's where we leave them. So I thought their relationship, it was very interesting because Hank in earlier seasons is kind of like a total, very evil character. And in this one, he has this relationship.
You can see that he loves Cristobal truly, and he's a ride and die. Now, granted, it may change the next season when we see it, because NoHo Hank was betrayed, but he really saved his lover, and he was really the person who really had, in my view, and I think yours too, a full-on character arc of going from someone who was evil to discovering love, changing for love, and then really having family. Although, granted, he hasn't changed that much because they're still in gangs where they kill innocent people.
That's true. But it did feel like they were at least caring about someone who was not themselves.
Yeah, like NoHo Hank didn't have to sacrifice and put his life at risk for Cristobal, but yet he did because he chose love above all. There's a lot that happened in this season, and 20-minute increments per episode
It was like 30.
20 to 30-minute increments per episode is a lot. It's not a lot to cover all of this, but overall, let's do our overall thoughts. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend. If you haven't seen our other video from the previous season, please watch it below in the description.
Yeah, it's outstanding. A great season, just as good as the other two, if not better depending on your taste. I think season 2 is probably my favorite, but this one was terrific, takes the show in new directions, and I just love seeing TV shows that don't become stagnant, that are constantly evolving and changing and doing something new. And not to mention the directing, which Bill Hader directs most of the episodes, not all of them, but most of them. Fantastic. I mean, creative, very like well framed and photographed, and great visual style that's very unique and very well designed. So there's some great action set pieces, the bike scene on the freeway, you know, the explosions. We kind of forget because there's so much like character development and important stuff going on that there's some great funny action sequences and scenes, like
great visuals.
I mean, all around, you know, fantastic writing. And it just, at the end of it, it comes down to just great writing, great characters, and yeah, it's a great show. I
would rate it 9 out of 10. You?
Yeah, 9 out of 10.
And wow, this is the only time we've agreed on the rating.
I think we actually agreed.
Thank you again for watching our videos. We really enjoyed these discussions. Let us know your thoughts, and if you have seen it, if you're excited to see it, and we will see you in our next video.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.